welcome to Scottish Field Videos. I'm with Wendy Barrie today from the Scottish Food Guide on the Fife Coastal Path. So what are we making today?
A clootie dumpling.
And what's that?
A clootie dumpling is a little bit like your Christmas pudding, except you can eat it all year round. And it's made in a cloth, and a cloot is the name, the Scots word for cloth.
Right,
So you don't have to have your classic Christmas pudding, you can have a clootie dumpling instead.
Delicious.
So a clootie dumpling is a Scottish pudding. It boils away for about 3 hours on the cooker, but it's worth every second of those 3 hours. So the recipe will be on the link, but we have got some dried fruit, sultanas, any vine fruits that you like, cinnamon, ginger, flour, baking powder, and some suet. Now the suet is in there, and it can be a meat suet or it can be a vegetarian, so you don't have to worry about not getting a vegetarian suet. They're in all the shops, so that's quite easy. And we're going to add, those are all our dry ingredients, so we want to make sure that they're just well mixed together. You don't need an electric mixer for this, it's very simple. And we'll break 3 eggs in a bowl for this quantity, and this will serve about 8 people. These are medium-sized free-range eggs from one of the local Fife farms, actually. Yeah. Give your hands a wash whenever you've been handling eggshells. And we'll give them a little whisk, just to break them up, that's enough. So this is a remarkably moist, light pudding. It's my granny's recipe. It's really delicious. One of the things we add to give it that moist lightness is apple. So I wouldn't go for an overly sweet one, and even better if you've got some of your local ones still. This is a Braeburn. Bramley would be good as well. It doesn't need to be too dessert. It can be quite a stark cooker if you happen to have any. Grate it. And I've got some whole milk here to add as well. That will go in our compost. That's the grated apple. In it goes. It means that you end up with the apple where you want it to be, and the paper napkin can go in the compost as well. And we're going to add 150 ml of milk. Like so. In it goes as well. And that's all our liquid ingredients that will be added to our dry ingredients. Just combine them, and in they go. So it couldn't be simpler. It's not a difficult recipe. It's the next bit that's a little bit challenging, but you can handle it. So we just mix these ingredients together, and it'll form a kind of slightly damp scone dough. And if by any chance it's slightly on the dry side, just add a tiny little bit more milk. So you're just combining the ingredients. It's got a healthy dose of baking powder in it, just again to help it give lightness. So you're not trying to beat in any air in this stage, you're just trying to combine the ingredients. And that's exactly the amount of milk, so I'm quite happy with that. Just make sure there isn't a dry patch of flour lurking in the bottom of the bowl. You can see it's good to do this in a big bowl so you can really move the ingredients around. Gets a little bit interesting there. So I've got here a linen tea towel. Don't use a fluffy one. This is the moment to use a plain old-fashioned tea towel. And it's been scalded in boiling water on from the kettle in a bowl. And what you do now is you coat your damp towel with flour. Plain flour is fine. Any flour will do. And you want a serious amount of flour all over. Try and get as near the cornice as you can without flouring the carpet. Just keep going. It's not essential to have the sieve, but it just allows it to drift over the tea towel a little bit better than if you're doing it with a spoon. Now this is going to put a skin on your pudding because you're going to boil it in a pan. It's not in a cake tin, The form is going to be this cloth, the cloot. Now I've deliberately reduced my granny's recipe because before metrication the tea towels were bigger and you could make a bigger cloot, but now you can't. So I've reduced the recipe a little bit. So you can double it, but only if you've got a giant linen cloth and a giant pan for it to go in. So now what we do is we put the whole lot in the middle. You see, you want it to be that consistency, that it's a little bit damp, but it'll hold together. Like so. Next stage, some good old-fashioned string, a good, seriously old-fashioned string, so you don't want nylon or something that's going to melt, or something bright blue that's going to turn the clootie dumpling blue. And then what you do is you gather it up, and as you gather it up, give a little flip with your wrist as if you're playing badminton, and that way, you see, you get the towel and the flour is over your clootie dumpling. And then you gather it up right the way round and make sure that you leave a gap because it's going to puff up into a lovely pudding, and so you need that little gap for it to swell into, like so. Now if you've got somebody friendly to help, that's even better, but it's doable on your own, as I'm about to prove. I would suggest you fold your string in half so that you can then grip that loop. And once you've got it to that point, you're not doing too badly. See, you've got some air in there so that you can, the pudding will swell up. And now you can just loop it round again. You can hear the log stove behind me here. Tie it in a knot, and then at the end, tie another little knot. And there you have your clootie dumpling. I love an excuse to make a clootie dumpling. And here is one that has been on the cooker. Same size of recipe. Keep the lid on because you want it to steam. And this is why it's quite handy to have a little handle ready so you can grip something. And that's what the string comes in for. So we're now going to take this out of the pan and onto the chopping board. And this one will go into the pan. This could get interesting. Right, so iron fingers, out it comes. There we are. And at the bottom of this pan, I've got a tea plate so that it wasn't sitting bang on the cooker, it was sitting on the tea plate. And there's nothing to stop this little guy just going straight in there, back on the cooker, and it'll be 2 clootie dumplings today. Put the string around there, it keeps it nice in position, and back it goes. Now we're going to open this up. And just snip the string. And at this point, you might think it's very, very hot to handle. At this point, you might think it's not looking at its most beautiful yet, but that's because there's still another stage to come. What we do is we give it a little bake just to oven dry, just for a few minutes, just to dry it off. It's a visual thing. So at the moment, the flour looks a little bit crinkly and moist, but this is exactly what it should look like. So the clootie dumpling has been in the oven for about 5 minutes, just so it gets a little bit of a toasted surface and it dries out the flour a little bit. So it's a visual thing, it's already cooked inside. And then we transfer it over to an ice platter. I'm going to ask the director to put her finger on that paper. Nice one, thank you. There we are. Team effort. So, just again a visual thing, a little bit of icing sugar or castor on the top. And it is actually delicious hot or cold, so you can have it right now. You can warm it up in tin foil in slices for another day, or you can eat it cold as well. It's absolutely delicious. Time to cut in. Look at that. That is a clootie dumpling. And if I sound a little bit smug, it's just, it brings back happy memories of grannies and good food and family around the table. And I think it is really worth the effort, and I urge you to have a go at a clootie dumpling and make it part of your family food memories too.